Hello, welcome again to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the Laser Model Guy. What I want to do today is carry on with the build for the Spitfire. Now you remember that in the last video I completed the wing section, and what we're ready to do now is on this centre section here I'm going to mount the undercarriage. So I've got some 2mm wire. I'm going to shape that so that it goes around these two rows of holes, small holes, and I'm going to bind it to the to this base plate, and I'll show you how I do that in just a minute. But before we do that, just a big shout out to our latest member. So thank you very much for your support, and let's get on with the build. Okay, so I've got this wire, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out how long the piece of wire needs to be, and then I'm going to mark it from the centre into the shape that we want. And so the way I'm going to do this, I want the undercarriage to come out 15 centimetres or 150mm from the bottom, and so I'm going to need a piece that will go all the way around here and then come out 150 and then have a stub axle of 40 millimeters coming out the side, which will give us enough length of axle to put the wheel on and then to put a retaining nut on behind the wheel. So that's what I want to do. So what I need is 3 plus the 240s to go on the end, so it's going to be 603mm long. That's how long we need the piece to be to make our undercarriage. Okay. So I've got a 1 meter rule. So if I just put that meter rule against and I come to here, I've got 603. So I've marked that. I just need to cut this piece of wire now at that point there, and that will be the right length for our undercarriage. Okay, so this is spring steel. So with our 150mm, although it seems quite flexible at the moment and you'd wonder how that's going to work, when we're down to 150mm it's very, very rigid. So so this will be absolutely fine for our undercarriage. Okay, I'll just cut that. This pair of snips, just cut that to length. Okay, well that was quite tough. So the way I'm going to deal with this now is I'm going to mark this right in the centre, to be right in the centre. And that's what we're going to work from that centre mark there, just there. Okay. So with our rod right in the centre of our plate, I can just mark the centre there and then just mark the centre there, and then that will go forward along there. I'll make a U shape and then we'll be able to work out where our struts for that go down to our axles will be. Okay, I'll just bend that and I'll show you what that looks like in 1 second. Okay, so with a pair of pliers, just right on that mark, all I'm going to do is bend that over just like that at right angles, and I'll check the right angle by putting it on our grid here and just checking, and that looks fairly close to me. A little bit of flex maybe. Now I'll do exactly the same on this mark here. And now it's very important to make sure that you push in the same direction that this is going. When I bend down there, I want this bar to end up exactly in alignment with that one. So with that in mind, I'm looking straight down at the top of that now. And there we go. And by doing it that way, when we turn our when we turn and look from this side, you can see that they are in alignment now, so they'll be fine. And that is going to be to sit right on there, and it'll be bound between those two rows of holes, and you can see now how that's going to fasten on. So what I'll do with that in mind is I'll just mark up this bar now by putting that right in the center there, and then just come into the end of that, and again the end of that, and I'm now in a position to bend these down into the right shape for our undercarriage. So what I'm going to do is, instead of just bending them at right angles and straight away, I want to bring them out slightly as well. So okay, so what you can see now is that if we look at the front of this, we've got the we're just spreading out slightly, and then if we look from the side, you can see that they both come forward about the same amount. So all I've done is I've tried to bend those, just having a little look on the grid there, so that we get a similar bend on them. Okay, so that is ready to be bound straight onto the wing, just like that, and we'll be able to put our wheels on. So to bind these on, all I've got is an ordinary sewing needle with ordinary thread, and what I'm going to do is essentially bind them on through these holes, and then we'll put glue over both sides to just firm it up. So if I just start in, I'll just start at the back here, and all I'm going to do to start with is to just make the first loop and connect or start connecting this wire in. So I'll just pass that through the cotton itself, just to make a little loop. And there we go, we've started the process. I'll put about 2 or 3 through each set of 2 holes, and by doing that it should make it quite strong. I'll just go through the next one to start with, just so that we through again, and I'll just keep doing that now and move slowly along, and I'll show you what that looks like when I get a little bit further. Okay, so that's it bound on. I've put some glue on. You can see where the stitches go through the holes in that plate. I've put some glue on it, and that'll all firm up, and that'll be a nice solid fixture. And then of course the wheels will go on, and there will be a little collar on the back of there with a grub screw in, which will hold the wheel in place, and I think that'll be absolutely fine. Okay, next let's have a look at fitting the servos onto each side of the wing. Okay, so that's the undercarriage now connected, and you can see how that's bound on there, and it's nice and sturdy. And looking at the other side, you can see how that works. So what I want to do now then is I'm going to fit the servos to the wings, so they'll go in just there, as you can see in there, and the other one will go in the other side just there, and I'm going to fasten those in with hot glue. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check that the servos are centered and that they're functioning properly. Now I know I checked them previously in the last video, but I'm not going to fit these in without checking them again, because it would be pretty disappointing if there was any problem with either of these and we get the wing covered and such, and then it doesn't work. So always worth a quick check. And by centering, what I mean is I'm going to connect them. When I switch on the receiver and plug in the battery, these will go to their center point, and I want that to be vertical when the servo is flat down, so that they will stick out of the bottom of the wing, and we'll be able to make sure they're correct. Okay, so I'll just get a battery, I'll plug that in, and I'll check those servos, and then I'll show you how we stick them in the wing. Transmitter on. Okay, now let's just test our servos, and when we operate our elevators on our transmitter, we can see that they're functioning fine. Okay, so I've got a hot glue gun, and all I'm going to do is put that servo into position there, and what I'm doing is I'm just feeling to make sure that it's flat, flush at the back, so that so it's not sticking out, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right there, just like that, to hold that in place. And then if I just wait till that firms up a little, then we can make sure that we get everything absolutely spot on. Okay, and when that firms up, just put a little bit at the top as well. You can even use a small piece of material and just make sure nothing's protruding, just like that. And then what we'll do is we'll do exactly the same on the other side, and just hold it in place while that sets. Okay, with those firmly in place, the way I'm going to now deal with the cable is I'm going to push that through the slot that we've already made in our servo mountings when we were doing the design phase. And then on the other side, what I've done is you can see that I've cut a notch for the cable to go through, and I've also cut a little 1/16 relief either side, so that I can put a sheet or a piece of 1/16 balsa over the cable to protect it when when we're when we're covering the plane, and also that will protect the cable then from any damage, you know, when landing or flying or anything. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to feed the cable along, and then I'm going to stick that piece on top of it, just like this. There we go, and I'll just apply some glue, and then I'll put this in place and I'll pin it down and show you what that looks like. Okay, so just take our strip of wood to protect the cable, and I'll put that in position just like that, and I'll pin that down, and that will be a nice route for the cable to follow, and keep it safe. Making sure the pins go in a direction away from the cable, of course. Oops. Okay, there we go. So I'll do exactly the same to the other side, and then what we'll find is that our cables are then coming through, and we'll be able to do a similar thing here with a notch to bring our cable extension into the center. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to cover this center section here in 16th sheet balsa. And the reason for that is then the fuselage will sit straight on top of that sheet, and the fairings from the fuselage to the wing will also join that sheet, and make a nice connection there with the body. So in order to do that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to just measure this straight across from those two ribs there. Just make a little mark, and I'll cut that piece using the grid to keep it nice and square. Use a ruler on the grid line, just like that, and then I'll cut that piece of wood. So the next thing to look at is when I put the sheeting on, I want a gap, because the cables I want a slight gap from the front to the back, just here. The reason being, the cables coming from the the cable extension from the receiver will come down, go either side, and I want it to go through a notch here. So I'm going to need to be able to feed that cable through. If I were to put extensions onto here and then bring those through, then what that would mean is we'd have an awful lot of cable, which I don't want, because that will add weight. So I'm going to leave a little gap here so we'll be able to feed our cables through later on when we come to fit the fuselage. With that in mind, if I just do the same again and cut our material to that size there, or to that length there, using our grid again. And what I can do now is I can attach this front piece straight on, and all I'll do with this is I'll just glue it straight on top, and then we will use our sander later and we'll just take that edge off there so that it's nice and smooth. But bear in mind, this leading edge will actually sit inside the fuselage, so so I don't think we'll have any problems with that. Okay, so if I just put some glue on, and we'll stick this piece in place. There we go. And all we'll do is we will pin that in place at the top. Just like that, and then pin it in place at the leading edge as well. Okay, and then the cables will just come through straight there. I'll cut a couple of little notches and they'll be able to join with the fuselage when we come to do that assembly. So I'll just go ahead now and I'll cut a couple of pieces to the back and I'll bring that forward to about there, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. Okay, so this is the sheet now on. I've sanded this front down so it's nice and smooth, and I've sanded the back down so that that blends in nicely as well. Now the cables are going to come down from the fuselage and then go into this space here. So I've just got to cut the two little notches there, and I've got a piece that fits perfectly, which I will then cut to size and bring this in over the top to protect the cables, and that will join the side of the fuselage. Now also we've got our fairings. Now these are out of 16th balsa as well, and they will need to curve, so they'll bend when they go on so that they meet the right profile, and then you can see how that's going to produce this nice smooth shape coming down to the wing from the fuselage. But we'll have a look at that and I'll show you how that looks like when we attach the fuselage. The ailerons, as you know, we cut those in the last video, and they will attach on and then be connected to our servo actuators, and I'll be putting horns on our ailerons, so they'll be connected with a small push rod or a small rod from here just to there. So with that all said, I think that's the wing completed. So the next part is going to be connecting our wing to our fuselage. So I'm going to end this video here, and in the next video we'll connect up to the fuselage. I'll put the fairings in, show you how that all works, and we'll be ready to start thinking about connecting rods and ailerons and such. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.